Hey guys, I've returned to the land of the living, it's Devlog time! I was planning on doing one of these after a huge development milestone, but that never came, and your boy's gotta upload, so here we go! So as a bit of a recap from the last devlog, I made a bunch of new content, set up a demo for Steam Next Fest, and that's about where we left off. After that, my productivity took a trip to the store to get some milk and hasn't come back since. But that's not gonna fucking stop me! This may slow me down, but I could die right now of a heart attack and I'd still be working on the next WormSlayer update from my grave. So I fixed a couple bugs, including broken hitboxes, broken menus, and more, made some important things more visible, like these rocks which you can't walk through unless you're a ghost or something. Oh, you are a ghost? Oh, go right ahead then. They weren't easy enough to see, so I made that a bit better. One time I watched somebody miss the entrance to the next floor for 4 minutes straight because it blends in as just some prop. So I gave it a shiny outline and put a big green arrow pointing to it on the minimap. Now this is a longsword, but what's better than that? That's a rhetorical question, I'm not asking it. Anyway, it's a longer sword, of course. Now there's one thing better, and you might see where this is going. So here we have ourselves the longest sword. And I know what you might be thinking. Longer and longest swords aren't a real thing. But you know what? Not with that attitude they aren't. Moving on. I actually make my own fonts for my games most of the time, and I've actually made 4 for WormSlayer, and these 2 could use some updating. This one's used for the journal. I added capital letters to it. And this one's used for the statue descriptions, and somehow it's even less readable than the journal font, so I increased the resolution of it. Then I made lightning deflectable, and I did the rendering of it using pygame's draw line function. Actually wait, let me check. No, I used draw lines for the base of it, and then I used draw circle to round off any weird corners. I buffed a ton of items that were just not strong enough, most notably the shield, which sort of stuns you for a second after you bash a worm with it. So I made that shorter, and made bashing replenish your stamina faster so you can chain bashes and rolls. Next I added 2 new types of worms. The agile worm, which can turn very quickly, and the cowardly worm, which will charge you before running away. Then I participated in the GMTK Game Jam, came back and realized that WormSlayer's codebase was worse than the one I just made under heavy crunch in a 48-hour period. So that needed to change. So I spent a month restructuring the codebase. I probably could have done it faster, but I started off strong, quickly lost steam, and slowly chipped away at it until I could finally see the end in sight, which gave me a ton of motivation to finish. Would I do that again? Fuck no. Was it worth it? Kind of. Will I ever need to again? I sure hope not. Then I worked on the worms for a bit, starting off by making the laser segment, which went through a ton of iterations. Originally the worms shot the lasers themselves. There was a ton of logic around the worms going underground, through walls, etc. Because if a worm is inside of the wall, you'd think they probably wouldn't be able to shoot a laser. So I switched it around a bit. Instead of shooting it themselves, they would now shoot a projectile that would shoot the laser. That being this orb. And even the orb went through a lot of iterations, changing timing, size, animation, laser rendering, and a lot more. But the end product was totally worth the effort. Now switching to something simpler, I added a healing segment which will heal other worms. And to do that, it shoots these hearts at worms within line of sight that are hurt. And to do that, I just used basic raycast to check if any walls were in the way. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention that I made a raycasting system for the laser segment and reused it for this. The jar of beetles is a weapon that's been in the game for a while, and whenever you use it, it releases a beetle. When I was adding it, I would always spam all of them in one spot during playtesting, and it was very effective. But the thing is, the way I do things is not always going to be the same way other people playing the game will do things. So most people just place a few occasionally, and it wouldn't be very good, so I made it release all of the beetles when you use it instead. Plus being able to use it with just one click works great since it's meant to be a secondary weapon anyway. Then I added some sounds for flipping pages in the journal. And just listen to that for a couple of seconds. Alright, your couple seconds are over, hope you enjoyed. I added a feedback button to the menu that takes you to a Google form where you can send me bug reports, ideas, or your unfiltered opinion about the game. Okay, now let's talk resolutions. So the 2 most common screen resolutions are 1280 by 720 and 1920 by 1080. WormSlayer renders at 1280 by 720, with the pixel art scaled up by 4 times and not aligned to the pixel grid. So whenever you have the game open in full screen on a 1920 by 1080 screen like I usually do, you're seeing the game scaled up by 1.5 times, which sucks, because rotated sprites go from this to this. A lot of the time you'll have stuff like this, and Pygame needs to figure out which pixels to place where when upscaling. If it was a clean 2 times upscale, it'd be fine, but it's not. Now I know a lot of people probably won't notice this or won't even care about it, but for people like me who do or just like the aesthetic of really chunky pixels, I've added a setting to snap sprites to a pixel grid or compress rotated sprites to look like this, or even this. Now, if you've seen the last devlog, you'll know about these statues. You break them with your weapons to receive a buff. But there's one slight issue with that. There are a couple attacks that make it hard to control which ones you break, like the star spell with the wand and the rogue's throwing star spray. So I made it so that those attacks only fire one projectile in statue rooms. Then I locked the player in the first room until they complete the tutorial, which wasn't great because it gets annoying. But we'll fix that later. And finally, I released a new update of the game for everyone to play. Now wait a minute, we aren't done here. There's still a bunch of time left in the video. We've got ourselves another update to make. I want to focus a lot on controls and readability for this one. Oh hey, and you'll never guess what this update's called! So, starting off, we're not actually going to work on what the update's about, because I've decided to make 6 new music tracks. This one will play right before you fight the Worm King. But the Worm King isn't even in the game yet, so I'll be saving that song until then. I'm not going to tell you what this one's for, but it's also not ready to be added to the game yet. There are currently 3 floors in the game, and each one has its own theme. But if you play the game over and over, you're going to get sick of hearing the same song, so I'm going to make some alternate themes for each of them. Most of them have actually been playing in the background of the video this whole time. But here's a quick look. Then I added adaptive music. So right now the gameplay is pretty tame, except now you've entered combat and the drums have fully kicked in. And a lot of the time, like you did just now, you'll get a bit of a delay, and that's because it waits to switch until it's on beat. Alright, it's controller support time. I've been putting this off for a long time, but a lot of people have asked for it. So adding controller support was pretty easy. I just plugged in my controller and it worked. I guess there was the month I spent trying to get it to work, but does that really even count? Oh, and while I was doing that, Taha redid the game's intro and menu, and I redid the settings menu with customizable controls. Also, the menu has a day-night cycle, which I think is very cool. Where was I? Oh yeah, the update! So I had this little effect around the edges of the screen to let the player know that they're going to fucking die. I made the entrances to statue rooms glow because a lot of people, myself included, fire off attacks as soon as they enter a room, which is definitely not a good thing in there. Then I bound the longsword's lunge to a double click because both of its attacks used to involve holding left click, which made it very hard to control which one you'd use. I'll probably switch to a different solution because I don't really like this one, but this works for now. I added a little pop-up that appears when you enter or clear a room of worms. Depending on what room you're in, you'll get something different. And also when you first enter a floor, the text you get is randomized. So sometimes you'll get something like, hey, welcome to floor 1, take your time, you've got this. And other times it's just, hey, welcome to floor 1, kill. Then I finally released the update. That's all I've got for now. Thank you for watching. If you want to support what I do, consider subscribing or wishlisting WormSlayer on Steam. Also, if you're interested in playing the game, there's a demo available on Steam, and I also have a Discord server where you can become a playtester and gain access to the full game. All you have to do is go here, grab a roll, and ping me to let me know that you did so I can give you full access. That's all I had to say. You can leave now. Be free!